My idea of a good old time, Doctor Who-wise, is to throw a couple of pillows at the foot of the bed, grab a couple of cakes from the fridge, dim the lights, and settle back in front of the television for a cracking good Doctor Who yarn. Fantastic. I did it the other night with Robot, and, for over an hour and a half, was gleefully transported into the world of Who, finding myself thrilled and chilled by this atmospheric tale of a giant robot, its wacky prof creator, those scientific reform society nuts, and, of course, the brand new Doctor, the tough but tender and desirable Sarah Jane, and that splendid chap the Brigadier and his unit buddies. What more could a Doctor Who fan ask for? I find myself saddened at the way so many so-called fans of the show tear apart quite a number of its offerings. If you were to take on board all these rotten reviews, you would end up thinking that Doctor Who never had one decent story in its life, which is certainly not the case. Even classics like The Seeds of Death, The Mind of Evil, The Time Monster, The Sea Devils, Planet of the Daleks, and The Robots of Death are either underrated or disregarded with such remarks as not really demonstrative of that era or utterly ridiculous. Some years ago, before everyone had videos, such Doctor Who stories as those mentioned, and many others, were the great unspoken. Now, with their relatively easy availability, a great many people seem hell-bent on what amounts to desecration of something which so many other people hold dear. A prime example is Robot. Someone referred to it in DWB as a Christmas turkey, and someone else in that same publication as this white elephant, suggesting that Planet of Evil should have been released instead. For me, Robot holds no disappointments. It's an honest-to-goodness Doctor Who great. There. And I don't care who disagrees with me. It has the same effect on me 18 years on from my teeny bopper days. Thrilling, exciting, yes, even a wee bit scary. Because I know how to watch Doctor Who, how to relate to it. As I mentioned earlier, I put out the light, plop myself in front of that screen, and suspend all belief, just like my behind-the-sofa days. And boy, do I have a corking time. Why not watch Doctor Who in the way I've described, and it'll open up a whole new vista you never dreamed existed. You'll recapture that icy thrill from your younger days in a way you'd never dreamed possible. And you can take that from someone who's been there. I bought the Earthshock video, and watched it that night in my own favorite way. I was thrilled to bits, scared to death, sad at Tadrick's death, because of that Cyberman who had to be awkward and struggle to the bridge, blowing up the control panel in its last moment. Now I'll never know if I was right, says Adric. Nyssa and Tegan hug each other in grief. The Doctor stares ahead at nothing, numb with shock. The screen goes black against Adric's broken badge and the credits roll slowly and silently by. When they finish, I switch off the television with the remote control before the BBC video blurb, and the room is now plunged into total darkness, in which I sit for a while, contemplating those 99 minutes of Doctor Who brilliance that have just gone by. That's the way to watch Earthshock. That's how to fully appreciate those atmospheric cave sequences, those atmospheric ship's corridors sequences, and those marvelous scenes of the Cyber army bursting from their cocoons, and marching forth to the accompaniment of that classic theme. For the duration of the story, I'm practically in there with the characters. When a Cyberman came up behind someone unexpectedly, not only for them, but for me, the viewer, I literally gaped in terror. Now, before anyone starts thinking that I'm not properly grown up, or some such rubbish, let me assure them that this is definitely not the case. I have a full-time job, a social life, a healthy interest in the opposite sex, and everything which constitutes being normal, whatever that really means. And Doctor Who happens to be my hobby, for want of a better word. I grew up with Doctor Who. It's as much a part of my life now as anything else. You can't get more dramatic titles than The Seeds of Doom, Inferno, The Evil of the Daleks, The Tomb of the Cybermen, Terror of the Autons, and all the other great story names. Inferno's introduction is a case in point, the title, writer's name and episode caption slowly superimposed over that wonderful volcano footage. Also notable is the Ambassadors of Death title sequence, screaming into view. There is also the Seeds of Death opening, taking in the Earth and Moon with the great overall story theme which lived on in my memory for many years. While I'm on the subject of things Troughton, I happen to love the Crotons, the Dominators and the Mind Robber, 3 season 6 stories which have been referred to in many unkind ways, but stories which haunted my memories long after I first saw them in the 60s, just as much as The Web of Fear, Fury from the Deep or The Wheel in Space. In my bedroom, which is really a mini museum to Doctor Who, one wall is given over to the Troughton era, with stills and my own artwork covering every Troughton story. Web of Fear, Fury from the Deep, Tomb of the Cybermen, Evil of the Daleks, The Abominable Snowmen, The Ice Warriors, The Invasion and The Seeds of Death, are all labeled classic Troughton, but, and I make no apologies, so too are the Crotons, the Dominators and the Mind Robber, because when anyone says Troughton, I'm as likely to think of a Croton as a Cyberman, Dalek, Yeti or Ice Warrior, a Cork or White Robot as the seaweed creature. Let us, fans of that wonderful phenomenon, Doctor Who, praise our classics, but also appreciate the average stories, and be tolerant of the clangers.